Good evening, everyone. Hope all of you are doing well and had a meaningful Tzom Gedalia and an easy fast as well. Tonight we're going to be learning Daf Mem Gimel. Tomorrow night and Wednesday night and Thursday night will all be a blot and a half each, which will help us to prepare for Yom Kippur. And then, of course, Shabbos will be a blot and a half. Sunday, Monday, we will not have Daf Yomi. And then next Tuesday and Wednesday, and I guess Thursday as well, will also be a blot and a half. Basically, a little bit of a heavier schedule between now and Sukkot, and then probably throughout Sukkot as well. But this is at least up to Wednesday of next week, so we'll be doing a blot and a half every night, not including tonight. Tonight we'll just be doing Daf Mem Gimel. Some fascinating agaritas tonight about floating through the air. Fascinating agaritas tonight about Eliyahu Navi being a precursor to Mashiach ben David. That's one of the rules, it seems, within the Tanaim. So we'll be learning a little bit, all connected. It's not purely Agadata, it's related to our sugyas. So we'll get into some of that tonight. But we're going to start tonight, we're going back just a couple of lines. We're on the bottom of Mem Beis Mid Beis. We're going to start about 8 lines from the bottom. And the Gemara says there, Amar Rav says, Hilchasaka Rabban Gamliel V'dir V'Sahar Usfina. Rav expansively said that our Mishnah, which was the opening to our parak of Nishahot Tziyuhu on Mem Aleph and Mem Beis, that we follow like Rabban Gamliel across the boards. Shmuel Amar Hilchasaka Rabban Gamliel B'Sfina. And Shmuel says we hold like Rabban Gamliel when it comes to the boat, namely that you get the whole boat. That was the shita that he held, that you get the whole boat. However, Aval B'dir V'Sahar Lo. However, when it came to those enclosed spaces, so there, Shmuel said we don't hold like Rabban Gamliel, we hold like the more strict opinions. So the Gemara here looks at the common denominators of Rav and Shmuel and says, Dekule Alma Mihas, 7 lines from the bottom, and Beis Mid Beis, Dekule Alma Mihas, everyone seems to agree that halacha is Rabban Gamliel b'Sfina. Everyone seems to agree that we hold like Rabban Gamliel in regards to a Sfina, namely that we get the entire boat as if it's one Dalet Amos. So if you're on a boat, a yacht, a cruise ship, whatever it is, you get the whole boat, even if you're outside of the Tchum. So says the Gemara, my taima. What is the reason why this is the case? Answers the Gemara. The reason why we paskin like Rabban Gamliel is one of 2 things. Rabba, answer number 1. Amar Rabba, hol v'shavas be'avir mechitzos miba'od yom. Because granted, you are on a boat, and granted you're outside the tchum. But when we look from within the boat, you're within the 4 walls of the boat, and a boat is usually surrounded by walls. That's the opinion of Rabba. And Reb Zera, we learned this yesterday, just to review. Reb Zera Amar hol usfina no talto mitchilas arba umanachim v'sof arba. The boat is constantly moving. Rashi here goes through 3 different mahalchim as to how to understand this line. Let's say the most balabatish way to explain it is that the boat is constantly moving. So he's saying that you only have Dalet Amos as it relates to the water is irrelevant because the boat's constantly moving. Some of the other Meforshim explain here that when you pick up your foot on a boat, by the time you put your foot down again, as it relates to the water, you've gone Dalet Amos. So a lot of different iterations of the same idea, which is that the boat is not static. The boat is constantly moving. If it's anchored, okay, fine. If it's docked, it's a different story. But if the boat is freestanding, if the boat is moving, it's mahaleches, so then there's no way that you're actually standing still. So then just in mitzias, forget about halachic lamdus, just in mitzias, you're constantly moving, and therefore, Reb Zera says that it has nothing to do with the mechitzos of miba'od yom, or kona shvisa in an earlier time, but rather just the mitzias of the boat floating is that it's constantly moving. Says the Gemara, my Beinahu, what's the difference between Rabbah, who speaks about the walls of the boat, and Reb Zera, who speaks about the mitzias of the boat, that the boat is constantly moving? And the Gemara presents 2 answers. We're 3 lines from the bottom of Beis Mid Beis. Says Gemara, Ika Beinahu, shenifchasu dofnei sfina. What would happen if the walls broke? Well, then according to Rabbah, who relies on the walls, would say, sorry, you can no longer carry according to Rabban Gamliel, you've lost it. However, according to Reb Zera, this has nothing to do with the walls. This has to do with the fact that the boat's moving, whether or not there's walls. This isn't a mechitza issue by him. It's not a halachic thing by him per se, as much as it is you're on a moving boat. So you're always going to have the entire space of that boat because you're always moving more than Dalet Amos. Inami, another possibility, bekofet misfina l'sfina, if a person were to move boats. And here Rashi details this answer as well. Last line of Rashi, Dibur HaMaschil, Inami bekofet misfina l'sfina, you go from boat to boat, ube'aver mechitzoseh shalzu lo shavas. So in boat number 2, you want Kona Shvisa in boat number 2. So it says Rashi, L'Rabba ein yochel lahalich bazu Reb Zera shari. According to Rabba, you're in a new boat. You weren't Kona Shvisa in boat number 2. Since you weren't Kona Shvisa in boat number 2, you can't walk there. Masha'in came according to Reb Zera, the Metzias of the boat is still the Metzias of the boat. The boat's moving. If you pick up your foot in place one and you put it down, just regular walking, because the boat's moving, it's like when you're walking on the jets and walk in the airport. You take a step, it's a 2-foot stride as it relates to the belt, but it's a 7-foot stride, an 8-foot stride as it relates to the tiles that are outside the belt. Same idea, just in concept at least. So these are the nafkaminas. So then asks the Gemara analytically, why did they not agree with one another? Why did they have to pick different shitas? So says the Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom. Reb Zera, my time alo amar Rabba. Why didn't you hold like Rabba about being kona shvisa within the walls of the boat? Amar lach, what would he say? Because mechitzos lavriach mayim asuyos. These walls were not made to be walls. They were made to simply keep water out. One nafkamina would for sure be cruise boats, because those are not meant for keeping water out. Those are meant for keeping people in. They're very different, right? Please don't jump. Yeah.
What kind of walls that are like invisible or actual?
The real ones.
The real ones.
Oh yeah. That's what Rashi says here. That's what the Gemara says here. Lahavriach min hamayim. If you look at Rashi on the top, they're real walls that prevent water. And because of the intent of the walls, Rashi says, V'lo chashiv mechitzos la'asos sfina kulo ke'arba amos. Now, some of the Meforshim point out that we're speaking about something that's larger than a base saw. This base saw sign, it's a karpif. And that's why these walls don't function as a mechitza. So we're like kind of mixing sugyas a little bit according to some. Nevertheless, that's why Reb Zera doesn't like Rabba's answer, because the walls that are here are not meant to be the walls that you're intending. And on the top of Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, "Rabba, my time lo amar ke Reb Zera." Why didn't Rabba, who spoke about the walls, why doesn't he say about Reb Zera about the metzias of the boat? So answers the Gemara, "B'mehaleches, when the boat's actually moving, kulei alma lo pligi." Nobody argues in that case. Rashi adds the word here at the end of Rashi, Dibur Hamaskal Amar Lach b'mehaleches. He says at the end, Afilu Rabbi Akiva moda deshari. Everyone agrees that if the boat's moving, a Rabba would even agree to that. That's not a problem. Ki pligi. Where is the machlokes between Rabba and Reb Zera? B'she'amda. That's when the boat is standing static. It's anchored. That's where we have our machlokes. And what was our machlokes again? That's where Rabba would say that the walls. That's when we would have our machlokes in our Mishnah between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Akiva. That's where we have our machlokes. But when the boat's moving, then everyone would agree. And the Gemara is going to bring 2 proofs to the fact that b'mehaleches, that when a boat is moving, that everyone agrees that it would be mutter to have the whole boat. This is, by the way, one of the reasons why you can be on a cruise on Shabbos. This Gemara, mamish, because the fact that the boat is moving constantly means that you get the whole boat as a Dalet Amos. But if the Gemara did not say that we were talking about a case where mehaleches, everyone would agree is mutter, then you may be trapped on a boat to say you can only have Dalet Amos. Maybe the walls are different. We'd have to get into the sugya, because if the walls are lehavriach, like the way the Gemara said it, so this boat is huge. The railing on the top deck of a massive cruise ship is not lehavriach. It's not to prevent water from coming in. It's not shaykh at all to even argue that. So maybe it would be different. Maybe that's a real mechitza. It's possible. But this Gemara and the Rishonim here dig in. I'm asking it in a modern way of, can you go on a cruise ship on Shabbos? But that sugya would be right here. Really, the sweet spot right here is to dig in and see whether or not the walls are considered real walls. So the Gemara is going to give 2 proofs now to this explanation that when a boat is actually moving, that you actually have the entire boat according to all shitas. Even Rabbi Akiva, who in our Mishnah limited to Dalet Amos. Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, 3rd line. Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Masnisa Namideka de b'mehaleches lo pligi. Our Mishnah is actually a proof to this idea that when the boat is moving, that nobody argues. That even Rabbi Akiva would agree with Rabbi Gamliel that it's permissible to walk the whole boat. Mimai. How do we know that that's true? What does it say in our Mishnah? Because our Mishnah taught as follows. Remember the story. Ma'isa Shabomi Palandasren. They were traveling from this place, the Fligas Vinasabayam, and they did come within the Tchum, but then they got pushed back out of the Tchum by a storm, by some weather, whatever the details are. And there we saw Machlokes tonight. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, Halchu Kula. They walked the whole boat. And Rabbi Yoshua ben Rabbi Akiva, Lo Zazu me Arba Amos, key language, Sheratzu lahachmir al atzman. That's what our Mishnah said. They only wanted to be machmir. They recognized Medina what it was. But they recognized Ladina that Rabbi Gamliel is right, but they wanted to be machmir. And this language is going to play out very, very critically. Says the Gemara as follows on our Mishnah. If you want to say that everyone agrees when the boat is moving that it's mutter, then I understand. Hainu dikatani ratzu. Now I understand why they wanted to be machmir. Dilma amda. They were concerned That granted, when the boat is moving, it's permissible. Everyone agrees. But Rabbi Akiva was machmir, he was strict because of what happens if the boat stops. Right? Let's say you drop anchor and the boat stops and you're walking around freely. No, you can't do that anymore. So in our Mishnah, the reason why it says Ratu lahachmir al atzman was because I agree that when the boat is moving, I agree with you, when the boat's moving, it's mutter. But it's like a gzeira. What happens if the boat stops? So therefore, Rabbi Akiva was machmir. Eloi amris pligi. But if you say that they argue even when the boat's moving, then hi Ratu lahachmir, they want it to be strict? No, that's not the right language. Isurahu. Then it's mamish aser. Because Rabbi Akiva holds like against Rabbi Gamliel, that if that boat is standing still, that it's usher to go more than Dalet Amos. So if you say that machlokas also applies to where the boat's moving, then the machlokas should be the same. Then it's not chumrah. Then Rabbi Akiva would hold this usher. So this is Gemara's proof number one that our Mishnah must be speaking about a case where it's amda. That's where the machlokas is. But had it been that the boat was moving, everyone would agree that it's mutter. Here's proof number two, about 10 lines down. Omar Ravashi. Mas nisa nami deka. We have another proof from our Mishnah that we're speaking about. That our machlokes is where the boat is parked or docked or anchored, whatever the language is, and that had it been that the boat was moving, it would be mutter. Because in our brisa, we seem to have an equivalence in our brisa between a boat and a dir v'sahar. Yesterday I said it was a box of some kind. That's incorrect. I don't know why I said that. It's just not true. It's an enclosed space. We learned about this. A dir is a place where animals graze. So that's what it's talking about here. And because our Mishnah speaks about both sfina and dir v'sahar in the same breath, so we can therefore make an equivalence between them. Ma dir v'sahar dekvi'e, just like these two places are fixed, the dir v'sahar, this place where animals graze, they're not moving anywhere. Afsfina nami dekvi'e, must be that their machlokes is where the boat is not actually moving. So that's the second proof that we have here. So basically, in conclusion, we have a machlokes in our Mishnah between Rabban Gamliel and there were four shitas in the Tanai. We had Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah on one side, and then we had Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Akiva on the other. Okay, they argued in our Mishnah, do you get Dalet Amos on the boat? That was the more strict opinion. Or Rabban Gamliel said, the more lenient opinion is that you get the whole boat. Okay, and then within Rabban Gamliel, we had two shitas, Rabban and Rabbi Zera. We said, why is it that we hold like Rabban Gamliel, or what is the deeper svara? And we said that Rabbi said that you were kona shvi, so there are walls of the boat, which Rav Huna rejects. Those walls are not for that purpose. And Rav Huna says that no, this is all about the metzias of the boat. That when a boat is moving, the reason why Rabban Gamliel says that you're allowed to walk the whole boat is because every time you pick up your foot, as it relates to the water, your stride is much greater than Dalet Amos. Especially if the boat is moving quickly. What if the boat's moving slowly? You got to get into the Rishonim to analyze. Like, what if the boat is? What if you don't know if the boat's moving? You can't tell. The motor's off. You're not rowing, but you're just kind of, what's the word? Drifting.
Right.
Drifting. Yeah, I think it's. Is that it? Yeah, either one. So basically, we'd have to get into the Rishonim to answer those questions. But the assumption within Rabban Gamliel, the way Reb Zera understood him, was because of that. Okay, let's continue now. We are right now about a third of the way down. Amar le Rabbi Achabrei de Rabba le Rabbi Ashi Hilchos Rabban Gamliel b'Sfina. He requotes the shita that we heard earlier, one that we saw already, in the name of both Rav and Shmuel, that we hold like Rabban Gamliel with the boat, that you get the whole boat for whatever reason. We don't know yet if we were to paskin like Rabba or Reb Zera within Rabban Gamliel. We don't know. It says the Gemara Hilchasa. If you're saying the word of Hilchasa that we paskin like the shita of Rabban Gamliel, Hilchasa mechlal depliti, that implies that there's a dissenting opinion. So, who's the dissenting opinion? Says the Gemara. You're right. In V'hatanya, and this V'hatanya, Rashi here adds again B'nichusa. This is not the V'hatanya that is the strong, you don't know what you're talking about V'hatanya. This is a simple one. V'hatanya, Hananya, Machlokes and the Girsa here, but if we were to read the parentheses, it makes perfect sense in one way. Ben Achi Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua was one of the four Tanaim in our Mishnah who's arguing here. So let's, we can read it either way. But Hananya Omer, Koloso Hayom, that whole day they were on the boat together, all four of these Chashuv Tanaim. Yashvu B'dana B'dvar Halacha. They sat there within Dalet Amos arguing back and forth. Then doing the yes, no, maybe. And then Emesh at the night, Hichriya Achi Abba Halacha Rabban Gamliel B'Sfina. And then they finally did agree that the halacha was like Rabban Gamliel, but there was a dissenting opinion. The halacha could be Akiva b'Dir v'Sahar, and we pass the mechumra by Dir v'Sahar, by these spaces that are more locked up. That if remember the case of Hosea, they took you up and they plunked you into a guy picks you up and they steal you from your tchum and they put you into this Dir v'Sahar. There we are, machmir, that you only have Dalet Amos, and that wraps up this aspect of the sugya. Now, all in all, we've been speaking about Tchum Shabbos. That's what we're talking about here. What happens if you get forced out of your Tchum? So here, we're going to ask a different question and learn some Agaritas along the way. Do we have an issue of Tchum Shabbos above 10 Tfachim? When we were little kids, the JCC here on 2 in Sacramento, they may still have it, I don't know. They used to have a jungle gym with like the monkey bars. But we little kids used to climb on top of the monkey bars and walk on top. That's above 10 Tfachim. So let's say you could walk that way for 2,000 amos. Would there be a problem of Tchum Shabbos if you are managing to hover above 10 Tfachim? Like we had this question by carrying, right? Above 10 Tfachim, Rosh Hashanah is Makom Ptur. So is there a problem here by Tchum Shabbos above 10 Tfachim? That is the Gemara's question here halfway down. Ram Gimel Amud Aleph says the Gemara as follows, by Reb Chananya, Yesh Tchum L'Mala Me'asara, Ein Tchum L'Mala Me'asara. Do we have a problem of Tchum Shabbos above 10 Tfachim? Yes or no? So Amud Gavo Asara V'Rochav Arba Lo Tibaylach. Everyone agrees that if you have a pillar that is 10 by 4 by 4, that's what we would normally call a Rishus HaYachid, but here we're not speaking about Rishuyos. So there, says the Gemara, we're not talking about that type of shape. Pashat, that's going to be the Aras Nichtahi, that's a convenient place for a person to walk. Its shape is not annoying to walk on. It's its own Rishus, because it's its own Rishus, so therefore we would assume that there is Tchum Shabbos in such a case. Namely, if you're walking on top of a house, that's a flat roof, of course there's Tchum Shabbos there, that's for sure. We'll have to see what the case is. Kiti Bailach, where is the case of 10 Tfachim, of our question about Tchum Shabbos above 10 Tfachim? What if it's a very narrow, you're walking on it's like one of those challenge courses where you have to walk on little pedestals, you're hopping from pedestal to pedestal, none of them is a Rishus HaYachid. So now you walk on that for 2,000 hours. Does that count? Does that consider Tchum? So that's one case. Inami deka'azal b'kfitza, or you manage to jump. Take a look at Rashi, 8 lines from the bottom. Dibur hamaschal b'kfitza b'shem. You use one of the shemos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to float. No, everybody does this all the time. Mm-hmm. So it says in Gemara, mihabe hilu cholo. Would it be considered if you could do this, if you knew how, if you did it, whatever the case? But the Meforshim point out I saw a whole lengthy footnote in the Masifta, a whole long footnote, but there were plenty of times in Jewish history that people would have benefited from doing this to save their lives. And it was not done that often. So a good question as to why it's not done, but at least the Gemara recognizes that it's a theoretical possibility. That yeah, that's a great question, because we already pointed out that if you were standing on a Rishus HaYachid, if I'm standing on the top of my house and the top of my house is flat, the Gemara assumes
what's the question?
That is Tchum Shabbos. That's not considered above 10 Tfachim because you're walking on a normal surface. So your question is great, and I think the answer is mashma from the Gemara. You have to be 10 Tfachim above what is considered ground, but it's not ground as it relates to dirt. It's ground as it relates to whatever surface you're on. Actually. Oh yeah, that's for sure. For sure that. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, you saying that these are the transmitters
I've never done it. But the Meforshim say that it's using one of the Shemos of Hashem, it's playing with the rules of nature. Hover. Some Meforshim, the Rambam indicates that this is the case, that here it doesn't actually mean the way Rashi understands it, the Machlokas Rishonim here. He says that if you manage to be able to jump, you're constantly jumping the kfitza from like, let's say the pedestal example I gave, from pedestal to pedestal to pedestal without stopping. Is that considered being above 10 tefachim? So the Rambam does argue against this idea because the Gemara doesn't say that it was a shame. The Gemara just says it's kfitza. Rashi adds in that it's a shame, but Rashi does understand that way. The Rambam doesn't. He was more of the scientific mind, I guess, as it were. He was a doctor. So, okay. And then the third possibility, and the reason that we're all here tonight is to speak about this, is lishna achrina bisfina. What about a boat, right? Is that considered above 10 tefachim? If you're 10 tefachim off the water, this is the obvious question, really. If you're 10 tefachim off the water, but on the boat, so how does that work? So let's see how this plays out. What's the din? 2/3 of the way down. So we're going to go through a number of sources here. Let's see. Amar Rav Hoshea Tashma. Let's look at source number 1 back in our Mishnah yet again. We saw there that there was a machlokes in that case where your boat was within Tchum Shabbos, and then due to waves, storms, whatever it is, your boat pushes back outside the Tchum. Now, amris, if you say bishlama yesh tchumin, if you say that there is Tchum Shabbos there, so then mishum hachi ratzu. That's why the lenient opinions want it to be machmir. The other opinion you can be strict all you want, but you can be lenient all you want, Rabbi Gamliel, but we're going to be strict. So that's fine. But Elai amris ein tchumen. If you say that there's no tchum Shabbos, then amai rotzu. What does it mean that they want it to be lenient? It doesn't make any sense. They go, what do you mean lenient? It's usher. You hold it's usher, or you hold it's mutter. In this case, it would actually be mutter because there's ein tchumen. If you hold that there's no tchum, so by the way, just to take your question and ruin it a little bit, your question is true on earth, but the Gemara assumes that a boat we measure from the water. Measure from the water. So if your boat is above 10 tefachim, so then we would have to ask the question, is there tchum above 10 tefachim? That's what the Gemara assumes. So that's argument number one, and the Gemara rejects that and says, no, you can't say that because maybe the boat is a short boat and it's close to the ground. You're walking in your boat is in very slushy water. Rashi highlights it. Rashi, I think highlights this. Yeah, Rashi says 4 lines from the bottom. You're actually very close. Swamp. It's like swampland. You're in a canoe. You're not on a cruise ship. You're not on a yacht, right? You're very close to the ground. So that's what he says. Rabbi says it in another context. We'll see where shortly. But we bring it back over here. Tashma, another way to try and prove our case. We weren't able to do it yet. Again, our question is that on a boat, and when you're either hopping or floating, whatever the kvitza one is. So do we say that there's tchum above 10 tefachim? Says the Gemara, another case, Tashma, kamachas lo nichnasu lenamala ad shechashecha. That's our Mishnah yet again. You didn't get into the port until after Shkia. Remember we said in our Mishnah that Rabbi Gamliel had some type of binocular or monocular, whatever it was, monocle? Binocular? Binoculars. And he was able to tell its measure only saw to a certain distance, right? And then that was considered fine. Okay, says the Gemara. That only makes sense if you say that there's tchum. What was Rabbi Gamliel measuring if he didn't hold the tchum Shabbos above 10 tefachim? Who cares? If you say that the boat is 10 tefachim tall, and if you say that there's no tchum above 10 tefachim, what was Rabbi Gamliel measuring? Who cares where you are? You could be anywhere and you're going to be allowed to carry because there's no tchum above 10 tefachim. Says the Gemara, can't argue that either. Amar Rava could be in the halachas berakat, and maybe we're talking there where it was actually much lower to the ground. It wasn't a big boat, it was a small boat. So that rejects option number 2. We still don't have an answer to our question. Is there tchum Shabbos above 10 tefachim? Tashma, try number 3. Hani Shev Shmaisa, famous book of the Shev Shmaisa. We got it from here, and we'll see why. There were 7 vorts, 7 shiurim, the Ismarin b'tzafra b'shabsa, that were said in the morning on Shabbos, Kamed Rav Chizda b'Sura, and these 7 shiurim were given in front of Rav Chizda in the city of Sura. But before Shabbos went out in the afternoon on Shabbos, the same 7 shiurim were given Kamed Rabba, mistake here, Kamed Rabba b'Pumpadisa, and those 2 cities were more than a Tchum Shabbos apart. How did they get there? So says the Gemara, Man Amrinu, who was the Magid Shir who gave these 7 shiurim in the morning in Surah, and in the afternoon in Pumbedisa? Lad Eliyahu Amrinu. It wasn't Eliyahu Navi, and he must have done his Eliyahu thing, and he floated above 10 tefachim. What is that? Alma Ein Tchum Lamala Me'asara, because the only way to get from Surah to Pumbedisa above 10 tefachim is to float. But if there's Tchum Shabbos and Eliyahu Navi, Afapi that it's all derech meis, Eliyahu Navi couldn't have made it because it's the Mr. Tchum. So it must be Haraya that there's no Tchum above 10 tefachim. So it says the Gemara, lo, this is unbelievable. Dilma Yosef Sheda Amrinu. Maybe it was Joseph the Shade. It says Rashi, 2 lines from the bottom, Delo Mintar Shabsa. He could give the Shev Shmaitisa, he can give the 7 shiurim twice in a day, but he was not Shomer Shabbos. It's not a shade, it's a shade, right? He wasn't keeping Shabbos. So this is a fascinating Gemara. We don't have. This is. What?
He said it like before, it might be one thing that somebody could be a shade or a shade in general, but he said for sure.
And they listen.
That's my point.
And then someone named a sefer the Shev Shmaitza after the story. Unfortunately, point out it's Daf Mem Gimel. Mem Gimel is 3 + 4 is 7. It's the whole Daf is all about 7. That's why the Shev Shmaitza picked this Daf. There's a whole Torah here. But I think the Shev Shmaitza would roll in his grave if someone thought he was doing a gematria and with the page numbers about the Shev Shmaitza. Okay, I don't know what the details are about the shade giving Torah. Good question. I don't know. Okay. Next case. So again, we still don't have an answer yet. This is a Gavaldik Sugya. Toshma. Hareni Nazir, if a person says about themselves, Hareni Nazir, B'yom Sheben David Ba. The day that Ben David comes, I will, the Gemara says, someone said about them, I don't want to, you guys are all witnesses, there's a lot of people here. I do not want to say that sentence. A person said about themselves that they would be a Nazir on the day that Ben David would come. Well, that's a problem because we anticipate that every day. And if that's the case, then you should never be able to drink wine. So says the Gemara, Achakira, Mutter lishtos yain b'shabbasos v'yamim tovim. So then, because, says Rashi, last line of Rashi, Devadei lo asim Mashiach ha'idna, on Shabbos and Yontif, Mashiach's not going to come. However, the asur lishtos yain kol yemos hacho. But because Mashiach could come any weekday, so therefore, this person is not allowed to drink during the week. Now, this poses a number of questions, one of which we'll deal with in the Gemara, that Nazirus doesn't end on Shabbos. So what does that mean you can drink wine on Shabbos? No, you can't. If you're a Nazir, you're a Nazir. Shabbos is not an exception to the rule. In fact, we have a principle in Nazirus of Stam Nazirus Shloshim Yom. So if a person did, as two kids in my class did in high school, and they said about themselves that they were Nazirim, then it's a full 30 days, no haircut, no mishras, nothing, no grape derivatives at all, nothing at all. Shabbos is not an exception to the rule. But the Gemara wants, that's true, but the Gemara is bothered by the fact that we're looking outward and saying, what days of the week can you eat and drink? What do you mean? You're either a Nazir or you're not. Not Lemafreya. The Gemara is going to distinguish that we're not talking about today. It means from onward other than today. And it could be that in the initial frame of the Gemara, it's like you're reading it. We'll see the Gemara will be asking the question of just foreshadowing a little bit. There will be a question of the Gemara about why it is that we're not concerned about all of these days. Because it appears to be from the Gemara that on Shabbos you're allowed to drink wine. On Yontif you can drink wine, but not during the week. But if you're a Nazir, that's not true. That's a violation of a Neder. You're not allowed to do that. So let's get into this sugya. Remember what we're trying to prove here. Don't lose context. We're trying to figure out whether or not we have Tchum Shabbos above 10 Tfachim. That's what we're trying to figure out. Okay. Says the Gemara. If what you want to tell me is that we hold of Tchumin, that there is an Isser Tchum above 10 Tfachim, Hainu, then I understand why Mashiach is not coming on Shabbos. Hainu, de b'Shabbosos v'yamim tovim mutter. Now I understand why the Nazir can drink it on Shabbos, because it's not possible for Mashiach to come on Shabbos if there's an Isser Tchum Shabbos. Clear. Why can the Nazir drink wine? It must be, therefore, says the Gemara, that because Mashiach is not allowed to break the rules of Tchum Shabbos, so therefore it must be that there is Yesh Tchumin, that we hold that there is an Isser Tchum Shabbos. Says the Gemara, no, that's not correct. The reason why we are not, this Nazir is allowed to drink wine on Shabbos isn't because of Yesh Tchumin or Ein Tchumin. It's totally unrelated. Shani Hasam, the Amar Kraz, the pasuk reads, Hine Anochi Sholech Lachem Es Eliyahu Hanavi. I'll just finish the pasuk for you. And it says, Lifnei Bo Yom Hashem Hagadol Behanor. As one of my Rabbeim once said, this is a great song that was turned into a Navi. Nice little play on words about how little we know about Navi. Should be the other way. But anyways, the pasuk here says, Hine Anochi Sholech Lachem Es Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi comes first, and then Lifnei Bo Yom Hashem. So we have a Seder Advarim. Eliyahu Hanavi is going to come day 1, and Mashiach ben David will come day 2. So says the Gemara, V'halo asel Yomi esmo. Says the Gemara, he didn't come the day before. So therefore, what happens on Shabbos? I therefore know the Mashiach is not coming on Shabbos. And therefore, I'm allowed to drink on that Shabbos. If that person were to be a Nazir, they could drink. Says the Gemara, Ihachi, if in fact we know that there is a Seder Hadvarim, that Eliyahu Navi has to come first, and only afterwards will Mashiach ben David come, so then, B'chol, Kol Yom V'Yom Nami Lishterei, Da'alo Asel Yom Esmol. Then in any day prior, when Eliyahu Navi doesn't come, so we're end of the day today, so then the Nazir should be able to drink tomorrow, because I know Mashiach ben David is not coming tomorrow, because Eliyahu Navi didn't come today. So if you're telling me that there's a Seder Hadvarim, so then I should be able to drink during the week all the time if I'm a Nazir. Because any one day in which I know that Eliyahu doesn't come, whatever the threat, let's say it's Seisak or Chavim. Let's say he doesn't come by Seis, I can drink all day tomorrow, no problem. There's no Isser Naziris for me. So says the Gemara, no. El Amrinan Lebezdin Hagadol Asa. Maybe Eliyahu Navi doesn't show himself to the whole Gans world. maybe he only goes to the Beis Din Agadol and you wouldn't know about it, so therefore that's why you're not allowed to drink the next day. Says Gemara. Well, if he's going to go to Beis Din Agadol, then hachanami lema leBeis Din Agadol. So maybe on Shabbos too you shouldn't be able to drink because maybe on Friday he went to Beis Din Agadol Eliyahu Navi, and now Mashiach Ba is going to be coming on Shabbos. So says the Gemara, nope, not correct. Kvar muvtach lahen liYisrael she'en Eliyahu Ba lo ba'arbe Shabbosos lo ba'arbe Yomim Tovim mipnei haTorah. Eliyahu Navi is a mensch. He's not going to mess up our Erev Shabbosos and our Erev Yom Tov. It's too busy to start with. So he's not going to make it even worse. So therefore, we know that Eliyahu Navi is not going to, I would be Mavater. I don't know about the rest. I'm fine with that. You can mess up my Friday anytime you want. Come over. Would love to have you with the tircha. No problem. So it's fascinating. It's really... Everyone would be Mavater on that without even hesitating, especially now, but even without now. So says the Gemara, what's implied from here? Kasal Kadaitach, what it seems to be is that Mid Eliyahu lo asa, Mashiach nami lo asi. We would have assumed that if this is true, that Eliyahu Navi won't come on Fridays and on Erev Shabbos, on Fridays and Erev Yom Tov, maybe it's also true about Mashiach. If that's true, then b'malei shabso lishtere. But then it should be permissible for the Nazir to drink wine on Fridays, because you told me that Eliyahu Navi is not coming on Friday. That we know. Maybe Eliyahu Navi is going to come Thursday, but we're assuming for the moment that if Eliyahu Navi is not coming on Friday, the Mashiach is not coming. So then why can't the Nazir drink on that day? Says the Gemara, because your assumption was wrong. Eliyahu lo asi, Mashiach asi. It can be the case that Mashiach will come on Friday with the proviso that Eliyahu Navi came on Thursday. But in that case, what should we do? Says Gemara, de kevan, de asi mishicha. It's okay, don't worry about it, because de kevan, de asi mishicha, hakol avadim heim Yisrael. At that point, we'll have a lot of avadim from the nations of the world. They'll be there to get rid of the Torah of that day. So therefore, pausing here, the Gemara would say that Eliyahu Navi could come any day. He can come Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, just not Friday because of Shabbos, because of Torah. But once Mashiach comes, then we'll have avadim. So then, therefore, Mashiach can come on a Friday. Mashiach ben David can come on a Friday because we'll have help. It's to your point. It's like a remarkable idea. Like, no one would be makbid. What? Also, will bring. You got to follow. You got to hold cup. True, absolutely. So then takes the Gemara another step and says, wait a minute. Hold on. Okay, Mashiach can't come on Shabbos, right? But then B'chad B'shva Lishterei. Then Sunday, we should be able to drink because he's not coming on Sunday, because Eliyahu is not coming on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Lifshot mina de'ein tchumin. It seems from here, first of all, by virtue of the fact that our brisa that we quoted does not say that you can drink wine on Shabbos, they also reject the idea that Eliyahu Navi and Mashiach will not come on Shabbos. It has to be, because there's no other reason why you can't drink on Sunday. And if that's true, that we reject the assumption that Mashiach can't come on Shabbos, then it seems to be, we're back to our Tchumen Sugya now, because we don't have this trump card of Mashiach not coming on Shabbos. Then, Lifshot Minah De'ein Tchumen. Because if you say that it's Aser, then it must be there's no Tchum. The Yesh Tchumen, if there is an Isser of Tchumen, then Bechad B'Shva Lishterei. Delo Asiyah B'Shabbos. You should have come up with another. If what you're saying is that you don't hold of the rule that it's him being a mensch, Eliyahu Navi's not going to come on Shabbos, and Mashiach's not going to come on Shabbos, fine. It's fine. But then why did you say that Sunday morning is also to drink wine? So it says the Gemara, V'haraya, it must be that we hold of Yesh Tchumen. It must be that we say that Eliyahu would have come on Shabbos, but he couldn't come on Shabbos because we hold of Yesh Tchumen, and therefore you're not allowed to drink on Sunday. So it said, 4 days of the week, then you have to come. Well, we have to get to the next step of the Gemara. But if we pause here, according to our brisa, it seems that Mashiach only in theory could have come on Shabbos, but can't because of Yesh Tchumen on Shabbos. So then, yes, but Eliyahu Navi could come on Sunday. That's right. Yeah. So we could have Sunday. Sunday could be the precursor day. So Eliyahu Navi could come Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And Mashiach can come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's the way the Gemara plays out right now. Mashiach can come Friday, not Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu Navi can only come Thursday, because when Mashiach comes, we have Avadim, so there's no issue of Tircha anymore. So that's how it worked out. Eliyahu is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Mashiach is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, just Sunday's out. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay. So it says the Gemara, it must be that there's yesh tchumen bechad b'shva lishterei de lo asiyel yo b'Shabbos. It should have been mutter. So it says the Gemara, our Tana is not saying bevados. Our Tana is not saying bevados, and as you can see, there's a little notation of the Rambam here. Svuke misafkale yesh tchumen o ein tchumen ulechumra. We're not exactly sure. Don't learn too much about Mashiach from our conversation because we're not sure why it is that why we're being machmir here. We're not sure basically whether or not there's Tchum Shabbos. What the Gemara's conclusion is. So machlokas aposkim. So that the Gemara concludes that we don't know, or we conclude that it's a suffix of whether or not there's an Isher Tchum above 10 Tfachim. Now going back to our sugya of Nazir for just a moment, says the Gemara, Tekai emas te kanadar. Where was this Nazir when he made his neder? If he made his neder any weekday, kevan dechala le nazirus, hechi asya, shabsa, umifkale. What? Then he could drink on Shabbos? If a person makes a neder nazirus on a Tuesday, you can drink on Shabbos because Mashiach's not coming. What does that have to do with anything? It doesn't make any sense. You're a nazir. Tam nazir shloshim yom. Ella, what must it have been the case? There's Gemara. Ella dekai b'shabsa b'kanader uv'yom tov b'kanader. You're talking about someone who made a neder of nazirus on Shabbos or Yom Tiv. Hu yoma hu desharile. That day alone was the day that was mutter for him to drink. Mikan ba'elach asir le. So when we look back at the Gemara at the very last line on the previous amud with which we started this sugya, where a person said that he was a nazir until David comes, so he can only drink that Shabbos or Yom Tiv, and then all the weekdays and subsequent Shabbosos and Yamim Tovim are asur for him to drink because of the Isser of Nazirus that he took upon himself. 2 dots, approximately, no 2 dots, almost at the 2 dots. We're still almost halfway down. Oh, no, yes, 2 dots. Yep, 2 dots. Okay, good. Another 10 lines, and then we'll wrap up for the night. Pamachas lo nichlesu v'namal. We spoke about this case where Rabbi Gamliel used a shvoferes, where he used some type of looking glass to be able to see what the distance was. Says the Gemara, Tana shvoferes haisalo Rabbi Gamliel shaisa mabit v'tzofe b'alpayim ama b'yabasha uchenegda alpayim b'yam. So it seems here that he was able to see 4,000 amos, 2,000 dry land and 2,000 over the water, but that was like the maximum view. And once he reached that level, he knew where the end of the Alpayim Amma was. So he was able to look and he was able to measure appropriately, whatever it was, to see that the boat was within the 2,000 amos of the shoreline. Harotze, says the Gemara, Harotze leida kama omko shelgei. What if there is a pit in the ground? You want to see how deep it is? Says the Gemara, maybe shifoferes umabitba, yodea kama omko shelgei. You can just take this looking glass and look down to the bottom and see how deep it is. The Meforshim are very troubled by this. What does that mean? What does that mean? You have a depth finder? If you can still see the bottom, that means you haven't maxed out the scope. So then how do you know you've reached the bottom? How do you know what the height is? So it's very hard to understand this Gemara. So there are just a couple of options. One of them is that this shvoferes is not the same shvoferes as Rabbi Gamliel. Some of the Mefarshim write this. But what we're talking about here is a measuring stick. And the measuring stick is, you kind of drop it down and see how far it goes. And then you know how deep the hole is. It's just a measuring stick. Other than Mefarshim, you have to come up with this case where basically the opening of the hole right to left and the depth are equal. And then the Gemara says that when you back up and then you can no longer see the bottom, then you know the depth because it's where you're standing. That's a 45, 45, 90 triangle, basically. In fact, what would have been created, but you have to get creative here because it's otherwise very difficult to explain how to measure the depth with a shvoferes. Last case, 2 more cases. You want to know how tall the tree is? Measure your own, this is basic algebra, measure your own height and your own shadow and do the math. This is like 1 is to 2 as 3 is to x, right? So if it's a 2 to ratio, the answer is going to be 6. So that's what the Gemara says. Last case, let's say that a person is buried, that they were not buried then, like we have people buried now below the frost line, they're 6 feet under, they're in a sealed box, so it's very difficult for larger animals to get there. But you don't want an animal to get the scent of the body. So what should you do? And we're afraid that the animals will rest there if there's shade on top, if there's shade like sail on top of the kever. How do you prevent that? So what you do is you test the sun. It's a little sundial. No, it's kind of a dalet shos b'yom. You take a little pole, you put it in the ground, and you see where the shadows are cast. You see where the shadow casts itself. And mashpia v'yored. And you make the earth in such a way where there's no shadows on top of the kever, and then you won't have to worry about animals digging up the ground where that mace is buried. We'll stop here. A blot and a half tomorrow night. Mem Daled and Mem Daled Mem Hamadab. Wishing you all a beautiful night.